chord, you just get the sonorities out, okay? And that means that if you can't articulate the note itself, you just assume that the overtones are going to be ringing through that anyway. It's not really a major thing. It's like, you know, bitching because your wife is wearing pink instead of red. I mean, you know, come on, it's just a decoration. It's not so important. If you're going to say that it's a linear thing, then you might have a separate problem, okay? And that is where you're going to have to, but you're going to have to resolve that, right? Okay, I can't resolve it and play it at the same time. So I might go. There's really nothing wrong. I mean, it's not exactly brisé, it's not exactly an arpeggiation, but the point is you can simply accent the dissonance and resolve it at a later time. There's nothing really wrong with that. It's a matter of taste, in my opinion, if you want to play the dissonance and the consonants at the same time, or if you want to make it a little bit more linear to just drag it out. It actually makes it much more expressive. There is a problem that I have at the end of the Beethoven Moonlight Sonata where it's whatever, it's something like that. If you play it as a block chord, it just doesn't sit right. But if you roll it, it's also bad. I haven't been able to find a solution for that. But as a rule, that's not really so positive in my opinion. All right, maybe we should take a little bit of
music.
Guitar music.
There's a positive harmonics. How would you reconcile?
Okay, for me, there would be one of two questions. Either the harmonics are cosmetic or the harmonics are structural. Okay? If the harmonics are structural, then they have to be there. Then I would tend to do one of two things. Either something like that. I would play on the edge. Of course, that makes it a little more difficult for the accidentals, but it's only a quick change. It's not such a big difference. Or if you have enough time, if it's a slow tempo. You know, something like that. It's not really a problem. If you want to play, if there's a kind of alternation between. You know, if the harmonic is a call and echo effect from what previous time, I might play it first of all with a very thick fundamental and not a lot of overtones, and then the second time with all overtones and no fundamental, which is, you know, basically we're talking about a timbral change, you know. But if you talk about, you know, what's it, golpe? We playing the thumb on the guitar. I mean, you could do all of that stuff. It might not be exactly the same, but it doesn't need to be. And I know that here's an important thing too. I have to tell you, okay. You have to develop big ears and not just big eyes. Because sometimes when you look at music, you see something, but it doesn't tell you what it is. It doesn't have its name tag because it's been stripped of its identity, and you have to re-examine what it really was. Okay? In this piece that I played last night, what is that? Albanese. Okay? In that particular piece, now, that is for the piano, but most people think that Albani stripped most of his ideas from the guitar repertory. Now, that means that when it gets transcribed and put into the guitar repertory, you think it's a transcription, when Albani's made the transcription in the first place. It's just not called a transcription. Do you understand what I mean? Now, if I play this piece, Albani's wrote the second phrase. That to me is clearly guitar music, absolutely clearly. So if I'm going to play it and I know that it's a guitar piece, then I go. In other words, I'm not going to play it as block octave. I'm going to play it like this. Because that's how a guitarist would do it. It would fill up the harmonies, fill up the sounds, and have a lot more interesting rhythm too. Okay? And you have to understand that if you look at a piece of music, find out what its heart is really all about. And if Albani's, which in this case took the national music of Spain, filtered it and put it into his hands, that's also cool. But if you want to play this music again, think about what its source was. If it's flamenco, make it more flamenco. Don't make it less. Don't emasculate the music. Return the juice that it had taken away from it, and then it becomes music once again. Okay? As far as extra sounds, I mean, don't be afraid to use glissandi or any of the special effects. There's something that I also like, which very rarely. Okay, so you have to have a special case where you're going to use that. What you're doing is basically alternating the air column. There's a special time to use that. Regarding mallets, now that's a special thing that I happen to enjoy a lot, if you can get away with it. Because then it's not the same as, that's much longer noise. But the room has to allow that. Just of course, there's always that. These are two different things, right? On vibraphone, you can also get similar effects too. I think I showed that to you before, right? Between the node, the end of the bar, halfway to the middle, and the middle. In addition to changing mallets, but also how you want to voice the chord. All of that is very important because it's just as I said before, if you look at wood and you think brown, then you get one color. But if you look at a voice, and a second voice, third voice, fourth voice, you don't want to say, oh, these are all black. No, think of this as a theater piece, right? When you are going to create a piece of music, don't just play it as if you were an orchestral player. Think of it as if you were a director of a film piece, okay? And this first voice is a character. It's going to enter into a dialogue with a second character. Then there's a third character, which is called the bass, and then four is the counterpoint or whatever. And each of these people are going to look different on stage. They're going to have different dress. They're not going to be dressed in the same costume. They're not going to say the same thing right after each other. There's going to be a dialogue. There's going to be a build-up of tension because you're going to look at some things differently and how all these voices come together in an argument, plus, minus, neutral, whatever, is going to be how you, as a theater director, are going to orchestrate your piece. Once you assign a particular characteristic to each of these voices, then it becomes more dynamic, much more alive. And once you give them a name, so to speak, or let's say a character, you're going to say, okay, is this character being true to his nature? Because if all of a sudden, percussionists sometimes have this potential, they'll see something all of a sudden start, and they'll play it as if it has no connection whatsoever to the music that preceded it. That's not good. You should feel like a theater piece, because it's not about the energy flowing from your muscles into the wood. It should be more about a discussion taking place between intelligent people who are balancing positives and negatives of what's going on, but their feelings are also entering into it. And just as no two people have the same feelings, no four people are going to have the same feelings. So anytime you use these four mallets, every one of them should be like a character in a play. A string quartet, think of it that way. You don't have too much doubling of voices per se in a string quartet, because they have to function in slightly different ways, that is together, but separate. Okay? For instance, if I'm going to play play that. Of course, that's a four-voice texture, right? Everybody knows that. That is. This number is not in service at this time. Who's the composer? Mozart. This is the most famous classical piece in the world, folks. Sorry to tell you, we got to know. Eine kleine Nachmusik, first movement. Okay? Kirchhoff-Verzeichnis 525. Okay? The first time I might play it like this, and both voices are going to be balanced, right? I'm going to have it nice and easy. But it could be that on the recapitulation, I'll revoice it so that the upper voice is a little bit sweeter harmonically. In other words, I changed the position of my hands so that the lower voice became more overtone based, and that the upper voice becomes more fundamental. That means it's no longer just parallel thirds or tenths or whatever. It means that there's really a color being used here. All right, I see that this is a little bit too much for everybody, so we'll take a bit of a break right now. I'd like to introduce, are you the cousins? Yes, okay, good. All right, these two fine ladies here are both composers. Bryony heard me playing in Florence, I don't know, about 6 months ago with your husband. So when you're a busker, and we'll talk about this in the next time, you connect with people all over the world. She wrote me a letter saying, oh, I'm a composer for film music. Maybe she would like to do something with me for this instrument. I thought, what a great idea. I'm going to be in Melbourne next week. Great idea. So here we are, 5,000 miles later, and you're her cousin, who also happens to be a composer. Nice coincidence. And the things that we have as interaction could actually, have roots in the future. So we'll take a break right now, and once again, I'm glad you're able to pay attention. Bring your questions for next time. We'll go into more detail about lots of other stuff.
What time do you want to start again? We
Oh,
stopped
I
at
don't-
3, remember, it's 5 to 2 now.
It's 5 to 2, so I would say maybe a 10-minute break.
10-minute break.
No, we're good?
5 past 2.
Right, yeah, thank you.